And then, yeah.
Hi guys, how are we doing? Adam here at Reef Lounge Aquatics TV, here with Bobby Ortiz today. Dr Bobby on Instagram.
Hello.
Bobby, thank you for coming along, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. I'm really looking forward to this. Bobby's in and out of the shop all the time.
Yeah, too much so.
Picking up bits and pieces for your own personal tank.
Absolutely.
But your own personal tank isn't really why you're here today. Although we'll talk about that as well.
Sure, we'll get to it.
Go on, Bobby, what's your job? What do you do for a living?
I am, I'm very fortunate to have found myself in doing a job that I absolutely love as a veterinarian. I guess we're going to get into kind of how I got into there, but in Ireland, I've also been able to kind of find a spot in only working with exotic animal species. So usually that encompasses rabbits, guinea pigs, but I see a lot of birds, I see a huge amount of reptiles. Mm-hmm. And obviously, my passion is, I'm here with you guys, is fish. And that's really what got me into veterinary medicine was marine biology, ichthyology, studying fish. But it's something I wish I got to see a lot more of, and I think we're going to talk about that. But, but especially in Ireland, there's really not any veterinarians that are treating fish. And even across the world, I think it's really difficult to find veterinarians that are going to treat, especially, I think, ornamental and, pet fish. I think we have lots of vets that are treating for... more herd health and like cattle, food production animals like salmon and carp and things like that. But
all the things where the kind of money is, if you like, selling fish for food.
Pretty much. But I think we're sitting in the shop with a lot of money, money in fish as well.
Well,
so.
that's true. That's true. Not the cheapest of hobbies. Everyone out there will agree on that. So go on. How did you get into it? Because before the veterinary stuff that you were, because you're obviously from America. Where are you from?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Southern California,
cool.
Which. I didn't know until I was one of my jobs actually that got me into it was working in a local fish store.
Cool.
But I found out while I was there that, and I don't know if it's still the fact, but LA, so Southern California, is like the biggest hub for importing and exporting of fish in the pet trade.
Cool.
So like most of everything kind of thing from the Pacific Ocean, all of the animals from Hawaii to Indo-Pacific, everything nearly gets imported and wholesalers in LA. So literally right next to the airport, there's like this one row, a strip that I used to love to go to.
Right.
That was, Quality Marine, and I actually can't remember the names anymore. Right. For that, I don't know if they're still there.
So it's just Reef Shop.
And not even Reef Shop. It was actually only wholesalers. So you had to have a special license. So you guys would be able to go in, and when I worked at the shop, I was able to go. But it was the absolute dream of walking through. It was massive warehouses of just tons of tanks of coral and everything. But so Southern California. I started off. Actually, my first degree was music, so I was doing classical music performance. Cool. And what's really crazy is that my roommate at the time gave me an old, 30 or 40 gallon long aquarium that he had used for cichlids. Right. And I was like, I've always wanted to keep a fish tank. I'd had other types of pets and goldfish and stuff, but and then I was like, you know what? I've always dreamed of having a saltwater tank. Okay. And I said, I'm going to turn that into a saltwater tank, and I spent about a year messing up and making all your typical mistakes of hang-on back filters and I think I still remember there was a hang-on back protein skimmer that was the bane of my existence. That was the loudest
Red Sea Prism.
Yes.
Was it Red Sea Prism?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, actually, this is before Red Sea. This was,
it?
But maybe it was.
I thought the Red Sea Prism was great.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Well, whatever I
had. Hang on back. Whatever you had was doing the job.
Me. No.
Buy Red Sea, everyone. It's amazing. It's not about products, but anyway.
Yeah. But so that got me into it, and then I became obsessed. I was reading. I went from not really enjoying sciences or anything to like reading books on water chemistry, and like going, what am I doing? Really. Yeah. And then in college, I was like, I can take a marine biology and oceanography course, and that rapidly spread, torpedoed me towards saying I want to study marine biology. Right. And while I was in LA, or in kind of a Long Beach area, that was the first shop I worked at. Was called Age of Aquariums. And I literally, they trialed me out and said, I'm just going to be shop and cleaning stuff. And very quickly, I was one of the top guys in helping to pick the fish and coral and fragging and doing all that. And that led me to getting an internship working at the Long Beach Aquarium of the Pacific. Cool. So I then became an aquarist after working there, and then was working at this really large aquarium. I think that it was the biggest aquarium that we had. We actually scuba dove into, so it's 350,000 gallons. So, we had sharks and stingrays, and so that was...
a fish tank.
Yeah, that was amazing. And it was kind of there, whereas my first run-in with... there was this veterinarian, there's only one veterinarian for the whole aquarium. Right. And he had a team of people that would walk around. So he was the nicest guy in the world. He's still there. I think Dr. Lance Adams is his name, and he'd be walking around from literally like, he'd get a call and the nurse that was with him would say, we've got to go take care of a sea otter. Okay. And so like, okay, and you just walk over to the sea otter aquarium, the tank, and they go, oh, we have to go remove a tumor from an eel and whatever.
Wow.
And I just remember me taking care of the aquariums and going, that is what I want to do. Like I know I'm keeping these things alive, and this is the most cool thing of understanding ecology and water chemistry and biology and physiology of these animals. But then I really found that a lot of times in working in local fish stores and stuff, and then going, we hit this kind of block where we're going, oh, we're reaching for medications, not really understanding why we're treating them, or we think, oh, we've got ick, is it really ick, or we have these ulcers, is it your anemia, like what is really going on underlying? And seeing him walk around and the knowledge he had, I was like, that would be cool to do.
Amazing.
And that led me to moving and living in Hawaii.
Right.
So I went there to say, I'm going to study marine biology, ichthyology, and then
in Hawaii, why not?
And I think we talked previously because I started working at this is, I think, this is just after the economy crashed, and our funding was lost for so many universities. So I was going to school in Hawaii, and there was the Oceanic Institute, I think, on the south tip of Honolulu or Oahu. And that's where the first place to ever breed yellow tangs.
Yellow tangs.
So I ended up getting, while I was studying, an internship there, and I started working there. Yeah. And it was a huge facility at the time. I think it's back now, fully running, and there was 3 of us.
Right.
At that point, we were literally just keeping things alive and keeping things going. Everything was okay, but funding had stopped, and so we were just like, we've got 200 yellow tangs living in these these big pools, and we were just keeping them alive.
Right.
And that quickly led me down to kind of finishing that, and I realized I was going to go down a path of trying to pursue aquaculture and trying to do veterinary medicine. And I kind of took a year off, and I said, I'm going to see if I can apply for veterinary school, and if I get in, then that's where I'm going to go down. And I was lucky enough to get accepted to UC Dublin, so here in Ireland. And
so you qualified as a vet in Ireland?
Yeah. So I did my degrees in the States, and then moved to Ireland kind of on a whim. I'd never been to Ireland. I'd been to Europe once before, and I said, Dublin sounds like a fun place. Let's add that to my application list. I got in, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to go travel, live in Europe.
Wow, amazing. And when was that? Long ago?
That was about 300 years ago.
Sorry, I didn't have to give you age.
No, 10 years ago. 10 years ago is when I've been in Ireland for, I think, coming up to 11 years.
Right.
So I did my degree, my 4-year degree, and then I've met my wife at the very end, my girlfriend at the time, so met her at my last year, and then the rest is history, and pandemic and everything else caused the whole world to change, and I found a home here, and now I've started working in general practice, but very quickly I said, why can't I take care of exotic pets? And I've kind of dedicated my veterinary career to treating zoological species, whether that's from birds, reptiles, and small mammals, and here we talk about aquatic animals. Yeah.
Very cool. So long and short of it is, this is a man to listen to when it comes to aquatics and fish and all of that kind of stuff.
Do the best I can.
Do the best you can. And very well, we're really lucky here, because I understand your passion and your fascination, you know. Like you helped us the other week with some goldfish that came in, and they had a few things that they weren't looking great. And there's nothing more satisfying to be able to take a skin scrape from a fish, put it under a microscope, find out that it's anchorworm, and then know that you're using a specific targeted treatment that's going to help that fish. And whereas fish before, you go, okay, well, it's just the mortality of the hobby and the nature of the beast. Now you can go, okay, well, if I actually treat them with this for a period of a few weeks, now they're swimming around happy and ready to go off to go and live in beautiful fish tanks in people's homes. Like, it's a very satisfying thing to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so very good.
I think it comes down to the same thing, is that, look, my dog is asleep next to us here, but like I really feel the same reason is that a goldfish, what is to say a goldfish is less important than a dog or a cat? Yeah. I understand a goldfish is only going to be worth a couple euro.
Yes.
You know, but at the same time, it becomes really common in the animals that I'm treating, that people will put down, say, I don't need to, why am I going to take care of a hamster that's only 20 euro?
Yeah.
But how many people get dogs and cats for free? Like,
absolutely.
So I think there's an intrinsic value to every animal that we have. And so I think it's important that we are able to provide a high level of veterinary care for all of the animals that we as humans, as their carers, take into our homes, into our tanks, that we're trying to do the best that we can to provide for them. Yeah,
you're dead right. Nobody ever looks at a dog and goes, that dog cost me 400 quid, I'm going to wage that against the cost of treatment. It just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Well, it shouldn't happen.
Unfortunately, it does, but it shouldn't. You know, I think, and it is a very. I remember I got into a bit of an argument with someone recently, but they were talking about cycling their tank. and was talking about, they went and got brackish mollies to put in.
Yeah.
And I turned around and I was like, why would you, would you take a cat and throw it into a room and say, is there oxygen in the room? Can you go, it's dead? Oh, no, there's no oxygen. We can't, it's not safe to go in.
Deliberately exposing your fish to ammonia in order to cycle the tank when you can do it in a bottle.
Yeah. And that was, that this is not even in this country, it's a different country, but that was the local fish store saying, this is the best way to test it.
That was the way to do it, That was the way it was done.
And then thank God things have come a long way,
Absolutely. So the hobby side of it for you then, obviously you're a long time hobby keeper. Where are you at with it now? I know you're setting up a new tank.
Yeah, what have you got? I know, it's new. It is new. We're going at 7 months now. And it's had its ups and downs, but you guys have been amazing and helped me get set up and get going.
We do our best.
But how it worked is the wife and I, we bought a house about 1.5 years ago, and I knew once we got into the house, I was like, okay, where's the aquarium going to go? And look, it's been a while. I mean, obviously, we're going 10 years. When I was in vet school, I had a small tank. Only for about 1 year, and I just realized I couldn't care for it the way I wanted to, so I didn't want the animals to suffer, and I thank God I didn't really have any loss, so I was able to get them to a proper home and resold the tank and everything. But now I have about I think it's a 400 liter tank. And I got it secondhand because I just said, let me get back into it, figure out things are changing. I've been coming in often talking to you guys going, wow, this is different, even from 10, 15 years ago when I was really keeping things have so changed.
It's crazy.
I remember when I was working at the shop, I remember we used to get reps coming in with these no-name LED lights. LEDs were just coming in, people didn't trust them. And no disrespect, these Chinese lights that were going, this is what they're using, try them, see what happens. And now, I've got a Radeon over my tank, and it's the most amazing thing versus metal halides and everything.
Yeah, they're very cool, aren't they? But definitely. I like one thing that I sort of pick up on just from that bit that's really good to hear you say is that you've got a new tank. It's 7 months old, but it's a new tank. Now that's the voice of experience going, this is a slow process. It's not really what we're going to really go into depth about here, because we talk about that in a lot of videos and a lot of times with people in the shop. People are like, no, my tank's really mature. It's 6 weeks old now, and I want to put an aquapora in it. It's like, it's not going to do very well. Nice slow pace is really, really important, isn't it? So I suppose being a vet with a specialism in exotics and definitely fish, it would be daft not to take this opportunity to talk a lot about fish health, care for fish, illness, disease, all of that kind of stuff, and how that side of things can relate to people keeping their fish in better condition, giving their fish long lives. I think I heard on a video someone the other day said our objective should be to give our fish a longer life than they would live in the wild. If we do that, then we're getting there. We're moving in the right direction. So what are the important things for you then when it comes to keeping healthy fish? I have a little list here of things with a few things that spring to my mind. The first thing, I guess, sourcing. Like, where do you get your fish from? And this is not about come to us, our fish are great. It's not about that. It's about the value in making sure that you're getting the right animal to start with.
I think I think whenever we're dealing with any animals, there's always an ethical question that comes into it. And again, my experience in trying to go into aquaculture and all that stuff, obviously is going to play a lot, and the welfare of it. So I think it's a hard one to kind of approach because it's such a huge issue. But I think you're completely right in trying to, I think the very bare minimum is to get a reputable local fish store, one that you can trust, one that I really, really feel that, like you guys, you need to have pet stores that are dedicated just to that species. I think it's really difficult, coming from someone who works in the veterinary field, it's really difficult to have a vet that works with dogs and cats that also works with rabbits. It's really hard. I don't work with horses. There's horse vets, so I do think that there's a huge amount of speciality that needs to be there, and I think that's one of the first steps, is having a fish store that is like you guys, that are dedicated to taking care of fish. I saw an alligator, I think, at one point. There's
a reptile and exotic store upstairs, and they've got some baby caiman and one caiman little wonder. So there are other animals here, but we're definitely they rent the space for a second.
That was the one stop.
No, they're all up there, but they're not looked after by us. They're not our remit. Our remit is just the fish and the corals and all of that kind of stuff.
So I think that's one thing. I think knowing that you guys, then there's different levels, is that that I know that I'm able to come to you guys to get healthy fish, and you guys are taking care of the fish properly, you're educating people on how to care for the fish. I think where those fish are coming from, you guys are, I know some shops are able to source directly from, Indonesia, Malay, all these different places, wherever it can come from. But most of the fish, I would assume, are coming from wholesalers, right? So those wholesalers, you want to make sure are coming from reputable wholesalers and ones that we trust. And I think in Europe, again, different. I'm coming from the United States. It is a bit different. I think that there's, as most things are, I think, a bit more loose and fast in the States. So there's a lot more wholesalers.
There's a lot more availability. I mean, you're talking about being able to walk down a strip and visit wholesalers and look at fish and choose fish.
I think there was nearly 10 next to each
other.
other.
I mean, we're ordering on websites, and we're ordering from people, and they're getting put into boxes with temperature packs, and they're getting shipped over to us. And you're right. We have to be careful. There are wholesalers that we know are very good. There are wholesalers that we know we have to be a little bit more careful with. There are those that we'll order certain fish from and not others, and there are those that we'll order anything from quite happily and know within a reasonable margin of error that they're going to come in healthy at least.
And then I think, obviously for the wholesalers, then you also have aquacultured fish, which I'm so happy to see. Because again, back in the day, it was clownfish. I was breeding clownfish, and that was something, like, obviously in aquaculture, that was something I did as a hobby, and even in Hawaii, was finding different gobies and trying to get them to breed and replicate and all that stuff. So I think that is amazing to see so many more of those animals coming into the hobby. And I think it's really important as well that when new reef keepers or fish keepers are coming in, and they might see that sometimes the aquacultured fish are more expensive. I think there's a big reason behind that.
100%.
It's one, that animal from birth has been taken care of in an aquarium. It's used to that environment. It's used to the foods that we're feeding it. Hopefully, they're usually healthier animals that are coming in, less prone to disease or exposed to disease. So I think that there is a premium price that comes with it, but I think it's one that I'm willing to pay, and I think that we all should be, because the better that we get to being able to replicate these animals in their natural environment and get them to reproduce, the better our hobby gets, the less that we're taking out of the ocean, and the more way that I think the more able that we're able to enjoy this hobby. So I think that's another massive thing that comes down to the health of what you're putting into your tank.
I'm just going to cut you there on the whole thing of tank bred fish versus wild caught fish. I was having a chat with someone about discus the other day, and how discus are thought of on the freshwater side of being very difficult to keep, very, very particular with water parameters and water chemistry, very susceptible to illness, etc. And it's true, they're up there as far as those fish go. They're probably the powder blue and Achilles tangs of the freshwater world, if there was such a thing. But once a fish is 10, 20, 30 generations tank bred, it's almost a natural selection process of kind of only the adaptable and resilient survive. Do you know what I mean? Like, evolution is obviously at play in every aspect of the life of every animal on the planet, and we're turbocharging evolution to say, well, it's not that a discus adapts to living in pH 7 instead of pH 6.5. It's that, well, they're all being kept in that water condition, and the ones that are not able to tolerate that don't go on to spawn, don't go on to raise fry, don't go on to have babies, and they're not the fish that are thriving in the hobby, and they're not the ones we see. So once something's multiple generations, they're just more tolerant, and we see it in corals as well, don't we? Like, absolutely. If you take a maricultured coral, I love maricultured. They take the seed of the coral or a small frag of the coral and leave it in the sea to grow, totally natural conditions, and then bring it into the tank. They're great, they're lovely, they're beautiful, but they're hard because they're used to the ocean. They're not used to tanks. Whereas if you get a successful coral, any of the SBS, that kind of thing, that grow in a tank, they're used to that environment. So and of course you've got the point of view of we're not out there pillaging the reefs for rock and fish and this, that, and the other.
And again, more countries are locking down and realizing that it's not just the aspect of us removing the fish and removing the corals out of the ocean, but it's the act of, well, the boats to get there, the trauma that we're causing on the reef itself, and the destruction of the ecosystem. We have to own up and realize, and I know we all do that, or hopefully we do, that we do play a significant role in keeping these animals, and that the more that we can get, the more animals that we can get that are aquacultured and corals as well, is only going to make this hobby more sustainable going forward.
Absolutely. And I think it's great in many ways, because obviously then there's the give back there, isn't there? Because people want yellow tangs, So people work out how to breed yellow tangs.
Yeah.
And in working out how to breed yellow tangs, we care about the conditions, we care about the fish, we care about the reefs, we want to see them, we want to replicate them, and then we learn more that helps us kind of give back to the reef, if you like, in the way that we just know more about it, care more about it, and don't want to trash it and destroy it so much.
And speaking of yellow tangs, I always think it's so funny that, not funny, it's kind of sad actually, more so, that, back in the day, hear people going, oh, back in the day, yellow tangs were 20 quid.
Yeah.
I could get it for 50 quid, whatever, and now they're 250, 300, whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm going, well, let's really have to think about this. Like, if we were getting them for 20 or 30, whatever, how cheap they were, that means that there was tons of them that were being trawled and pulled from the ocean and dumped in tanks, and everyone had them, so they were super cheap. They were all trying to get rid of them. And
that's
now,
why the region was shut down for import.
Exactly, yeah. And when I lived in Hawaii, there was all sectioned to where they would actually have every so many years that you couldn't fish out of certain reefs and all these different things. And I just saw, I think, online, there was a chevron tang, again in Hawaii. That's what they're I think Hawaiiensis, I think the Latin name of it. And used to see them scuba diving and snorkeling, and I was like, oh, you could see them all the time. I actually kind of thought they were kind of ugly.
Right.
I'm going for nearly $2,000 for the fish.
Absolutely.
And it's just because the fisheries and where they're specifically the reef they're at, they just can't get to, which is probably for a good thing.
Absolutely. So we're all about sustainability, all about tank bred, all about bringing stuff in and paying a little bit more for it. So I 100% agree. I think that's really good. And it's nice to see the hobby going that way. Talk to us a little bit about the environment that we keep fish in, right? So what I mean by that is whether they're tank bred or whether they're wild caught, whatever way they are, I often hear people say things like, we're trying to replicate a small part of the reef in our home. Now, my take on that is you can literally walk 2 feet into the shallowest water in any beach and anywhere in the world, and you've walked through more water than you're going to keep in not even the average home fish tank, in an enormous fish tank. So we're trying to replicate it as best as we can. There must be a compromise on habitat. So what are the kind of environmentals, if you like, that we should be concerned about when it comes to keeping fish healthy, in your opinion?
So I love coral. I love keeping it. I said I had a radio and over it. Like I've invested a good amount because I love looking at my tank and love seeing the coral. But for me, clearly, it's fish first. That's the way I'm approaching this and the way I've designed my tank. And I think the fact, first, I would start off with substrate. I think if you're going, I know that there's again more reef keeping is that we go no substrate or different things like that. I feel we should, because how many animals are filter feeding through the sand, looking for even clownfish. You can see clownfish going down and actually sifting through sand and looking for feed. Right. They don't normally; they're more pelagic and eating. I still think substrates. I think are important. That's my take, and I believe that many of the animals, and that it stops us from keeping wrasses or different things that might live in the sand. But I think the no substrate comes more to maintenance and different things like that. But
controlling nutrients, keeping various things in check, etc.
Again, this is coming from a position of fish and trying to keep them.
Absolutely,
and then the next step would be just the actual rockscape itself. So when I was keeping tanks, it was live rock. That was it. There was no. You could get this base dry rock that was not nice, and so I went with Marco rock and wanted to custom build mine because I wanted to have as many hidey holes and as you guys have here, and be able to custom build that and to create as much navigation for the fish to be able to hide into and weave through to kind of replicate as much of a reef as possible. So this negative space that I tried to create while also creating lots of alcoves. So I think that's really important. And I think you see these tanks and people might complain about, aggression of fish and this one's attacking this one. And you kind of might look at their tank and go, you have a mound of live rock, sitting.
They've got nowhere to hide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what do you think? That one big tang is going to beat the hell out of all the other fish because it's saying, well, this is the only area that I have. So creating as much environment, and kind of think, as you said perfectly, walking through the ocean a couple steps, we are taking these animals that could be, not all of them, especially clownfish, not going to be swimming hundreds of kilometers a day. But at the same time, they still have that option to escape or to run away, and we're not giving them that. So with it, I think it's really important to offer that. So I think that's another.
So that's a good point. A clownfish lives in a 1 foot square anemone and barely moves away from it. But if water conditions become unfavourable, if predation occurs, they can leave. Whereas when water conditions become unfavourable or bullying fish, if you like, in a tank, they don't have anywhere to go. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I think that's one thing there. And then I think, there is obviously, fowler tanks, keeping fish only tanks is a lot easier than keeping reef tanks, you know. So I do think that the basic husbandry, really salinity, you can go into pH and DKH if you're really alkalinity, but it's not the most important. And generally, if you're just keeping up on basic water filtration and water changes, you're probably going to be fine. And keeping a decent salt for your tank, you're probably going to be covering it. I always find it quite funny when you look at fish online stores, and it'll be like, oh, this fish prefers this alkalinity.
Okay.
I'm going, I nearly went to a master's degree in aquaculture.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, if you're talking about when they're fries and you're like they're different metamorphal stages, yes, that's more. But when they're adult species, we can really get into a big debate over, does it really matter? pH absolutely will matter. Yeah. But again, as long as you have protein skimmer that's kicking up enough oxygenation of your water, a decent light that you don't even need that's crazy. If you're not keeping corals, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. So getting a good environment. Another thing I think is overlooked when it comes to fish, and I don't know. I mean, you tell me. The theory that flow is purely there for corals. Now, when you've got things like tangs, particularly big fish, big water swimming fish, are they happier when there's a higher level of flow because they can swim against it and they get a bit of current exercise, or is that are we trying to recreate something in too small of a way?
No, I think you're totally right. I think there should be flow. I think there needs, but probably not to the levels that we'd probably be using on our reef tanks. But I also think it's really interesting. I've had the ability to not crazy locations, but scuba dive in a couple of different places in the world, and it's incredible some of the currents that will be whipping around some of these, and how the reefs will change, obviously, to the destruction of the waves and everything, and the erosions of natural erosion of the just the oceanography of it. But I think it's incredible that you'll see some of these shallow protected areas where there's like no flow at all, and that's where you're probably going to see much more of the clownfish and your gobies and some of these guys that's where they'll live. And then exactly you said, if you are going to be keeping these much more open water pelagic species, we're not really keeping proper pelagic species, but that might have been in the big aquariums, as I said, the huge ones that we have, the big fish like that. But still these tangs do live near the reef, but they would be able to handle a lot more waves and currents. So I do think I think it is important. I still wouldn't say it's as important, because again, you would probably even know better than I that the amount of oxygenation exchange that happens for corals with that flow, if it's not there, is really, really important. But I do think it is important. It's again, we talked earlier, is that we're bringing these animals in, we're trying to replicate as much as we can. This is a mini ocean in our living rooms. That, well, the ocean has tons of flow, then we need to provide at least some of that.
As well. So if you're running a system where, space aside, we won't get into the space debate, because that's a whole nother topic. How much space does it? Yeah, tanglings will be a long story to us pretty quickly. But when you're keeping something like, say, a soft coral tank, and you're keeping low flow, you've got very gentle movement, your corals are really just swaying in the breeze, that kind of thing. Possibly big open water swimmers like powder blues, Achilles may find that environment more stressful than a real buffety SPS system with a lot of flow that they can swim against.
Absolutely. And I think, again, the reason we use flow is not just for that, but also for filtration and trying to get rid of detritus hotspots and stuff, and to get rid of those dead zones. And again, if we're replicating that in the ocean, that really doesn't exist in the ocean, because it does, but again, the ocean is so good at filtration because there's been millions of years of all of the different levels of ecology in it. So
it exists, therefore it's good at it, basically.
Without any of our input.
Yes, exactly. So flow is not just for corals, guys. Flow is for fish as well. And you think about that, different zones for different fish, etc. This is a big one, and this is one I'm really interested in talking to you about, and I'll tell you why entirely. There's a product that we started to sell called Celcon, which is a vitamin that you add to fish food in order to boost the health of your fish. It's an American product. It's one that Jack is in touch with the guys over there, and we're getting imported to us so that we can sell it in the shop. And the minute we put that out on our WhatsApp group that we had that, you were there going, keep me a bowl of that. So nutrition then, this is the umbrella term, isn't it? It's nutrition. Is what are we feeding our fish? How important is it? How important is variety? And if we just throw brine shrimp into our tank every day, is that good enough?
No, it's not. It's not good enough. No. Obviously, we've been talking about just the act of keeping them and trying to keep the physiology of them being able to breathe. That's kind of all of the substrate, all of the water, the flow is just allowing them to breathe. That's where we try to provide air for them in the aquariums. But obviously, they need to. The part of them thriving is also being able to eat. Nutrition is important for us. It's important for every animal. So massively important. There is still a huge amount of research to be done in this area. We know probably, again, more anecdotal than actual, off of papers and me being able to say, as a veterinarian, we know that they need food. We know that they're, what we can look at is we can look at mysis is a really nutritious type of invertebrate, a small shrimp that lots of the fish that we give readily take. So that's why I prefer mysis over brine. But brine shrimp, though it has almost no nutritional value, is really good in being able to pack it with things that we feed to it and then freeze dry. Exactly. But the one thing I think we do need to realize is that, again, there's very little nutritional value outside of what we give. So when I see brine shrimp mixed with, I think you got the new products you guys are talking about, spirulina and garlic and all these things that I think are fantastic, especially if you're trying to get finicky eaters. I think that's really good to add that in. I feed brine to my shrimp, but my tank, but I don't rely on that. And I think even feeding live brine shrimp, it's not as nutritious as we have, nutritious as we look at the other types that we have out there. So that would be my take on that. But then I think it's really important that when we look at a tank, and I think in that post when I commented on that. I think it's really important that we feed a varied diet. And one of the things that we get into, and again, there's so many things we don't know about these animals, about the way we feed them, that we're taking so many like zebrosoma tanks, and we can see the yellow tank behind us nipping on. In the wild, that was what we were doing constantly, is eating algae. So that's an herbivore, right? That's mainly an herbivore. They're omnivores, meaning that they're opportunistic. And if there's a meaty meal, if we put mysis in, I'm sure he would go crazy. This is great, right?
He will.
But in the environment...
And everything else, and plankton, and copepod, all of the food that we eat. If there's anything that we put in there, they'll
go for it. But in the environment, how often are they actually eating that? And we know in the metamorphosis, and again, in my experience and when we were aquaculturing, is that we know that they are eating different levels of microinvertebrates, and it's at the fry different stages that they're able to eat. So we do know that they're probably eating some kind of micro bits of plankton and things like that, or phytoplankton, but then they're getting to a certain point that they become omnivores. But I think it's so important that we are ensuring these kind of omnivorous diets, that we're not just feeding brine shrimp and not just feeding mysis all the time, that we're feeding algae. We're ensuring that, again, we're going for these sterile environments, and I go, well, I don't want any hideous algae on my tank, and I'm fighting my own bit of algae break because my new tank. But at the same time, we were getting rid of the food that the fish is going to eat, so then we have to supplement with adding in seaweed and making sure they always have access to seaweed at all times. I think in talking about nutrition, I think it's really interesting is that garlic has been around.
I was going to ask you about garlic. Is it good?
I think it is. I think it's great. I think I use I think I got it from you guys, the garlic guard. I think it's fantastic for getting picky eaters to eat. It's got obviously open it up, and even my wife, the first time I brought her home, she goes, "What are you doing with garlic into the fish tank?" But what's really interesting is that the use of garlic and the thought behind it, that it provides these immune boosting stuff, comes from a paper that found that freshly cut or diced garlic produces, I'm going to mess this up, anoxin. There's some product, I apologize for not having, but it produces a product in it that has been shown that if we chop it up and eat that, even cooking it, I think, degrades it. But that was directly correlated and said, if we give garlic, and they said, well, we're not going to give fresh chunks of garlic to fish, which you can do, which I used to do years ago. With liquefied garlic, it's gone. It's not in that. So I would say the health benefits of garlic are probably not there, but I love it for enticing fish and getting them to learn that this is where I'm feeding this, soaking it into it, so they know and they're come rushing to eat the food that I give.
I wonder why that is, because obviously there's no garlic in the ocean. You know?
Yeah.
I wonder whether it's, you see things like animals feeding based on food signals rather than olfactual palatability. Rats that used to chew old electrical cabling in houses was because the plastic insulation used to be made of a fish derivative. So they're going, that is actually food. It's not, it's plastic, but it's got a fish derivative in it, so they're picking up on that and eating. I wonder if that thing that's in garlic that you were talking about is there naturally somewhere, but they're finding it in the garlic that we provide for them. That's
I do wonder, but again, it's I would actually think that, because I believe we the sense, the way they're able to smell, obviously we can't under the water, but I do believe that garlic, I think it's more of the smell that into it that attracts them so much to it. But again, I think it probably just started off accidentally saying, "Hey, let's try this."
Let's try this.
But I mean, I remember I used to just use freshly cut, or even getting jars of garlic sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same thing, but I think for ease of use, I love the garlic art. I think that works perfect for enticing that. But again, if I was more concerned over if I had a sick fish, or if I was really worried about their immune, I would probably consider reaching for freshly diced garlic and trying to see maybe that's a way that we can get them to.
Right. So it's basically enticing them to eat more. And we'll come on to talking about some of the common kind of illnesses, pathogens, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
It's getting them to eat so that a fish that's eating a good diet and getting food in has got the energy to fight off and therefore develops a resilience towards it. So.
And how many of the harder fish to keep, we say that they readily take that, but they won't in my tank, or how many wrasses or different, things like that. So it's just, again, different ways to entice them with different foods. And
it's amazing how specific some fish is, isn't it? Like there are angels. The angel mixed diets now are containing sponge because they need sponge in their diet, otherwise they don't thrive or survive and do well. Melon butterflies will only eat Bacillopora coral, and that is it. They won't eat anything else, so good luck to keep one alive if you haven't got it in your tank.
And I think like the Moorish idols, when people get those in,
absolutely.
I think it's one of the most strikingly beautiful fish I think that we can keep. I mean, but how difficult is it to keep them? And it's so hard when I see certain in my experience of seeing and walking into different pet stores and kind of seeing and they get always back in the States, and the big chain stores, and walking in and then you walk in and go, oh my God, there's a half dead Moorish idol. Why was that even here? Why is that here? And, those guys that are they only eat sponges in the wild. Like that's their entire diet.
Yes.
And you see these. I love seeing these stories of dedicated people with huge aquariums and stuff. And there's one guy I think on one of the forums that lives in Florida, took one Moorish idol in. Every day he would go out to the ocean, collect different colored sponges, and was going in to feed them back.
Amazing.
Mixing in mysis every day to them.
Amazing.
But again, we're not in Florida. We don't have the access.
I had my tank at home, which is currently being put back together as a reef system. I go for SBS Reef, but I had that as a fish only for a while with a good deal of angels in it and stuff like that. And I was doing some research on fisheries before I worked here or anything like that, and there was a requirement for sponge in their diet, and I came in and I was just chatting to Davey in here one day, and there's a piece of live rock, and he said, "Oh, that's not even one piece; it's 3 pieces held together by sponge." And I was like, "Can I have that? Can I buy that from you?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And I put it in, and they absolutely went crazy for it. They literally cleaned it off within about 20 minutes. It was amazing to see. It was almost like, finally, you're giving me what I actually want to eat in the wild.
And then how many people actually will buy a sponge as a coral and put it in and try to keep that alive?
Sponges are hard enough to keep alive as they are. Never mind.
And then turn around, and the fish is going, "That's food."
The fish is going, Cool. So essentially, nutrition's important. Learn what your individual fish species that you're keeping need to eat. Provide them with that diet so that you get the long-term health. And there's more research being done on it. And
I think a varied diet as much as you can, because again, we think of just like ourselves. Look, we're eating food that we're not supposed to. Dogs as well. All this, every animal, and you kind of think of the longevity of the life of some of these animals. If we're only feeding them a carnivorous diet, are they going to probably live a long, healthy life? So a varied diet.
It's great, but it's a Big Mac. Give them the rest of it as well.
Very good.
Very good. Go on, Bobby. We're well into this now, sitting here with a fish vet. We haven't even touched on illness and disease. So let's get into that now. I know what people are going to care about here because having been a reefer myself for 25 years, I know that what people want to know is how can we prevent and better manage illness and disease and pathogens and that kind of thing in our reefs, because we've all had it. There is nothing more heartbreaking than having a beautiful system that's years old, it's all going great, the corals are looking wonderful, your fish are fantastic, everything's doing great, and you're thinking, oh, that tang is beautiful, I'm going to put it in. You put it into the tank, it explodes with something, it gives it to all the fish, and before you know it, your 50 fish collection's down to 5. And you're sitting there, never mind the financial side, the emotional aspect of losing a tank like that. So it's a big thing. It's discussed a lot in the hobby. So I'm really interested to hear your take on it. So you've obviously worked with a lot of these things. You help us with that kind of stuff all the time in terms of what do fish need.
I think the best, like the two first things you started on is like prevention, and how do we the prevention is by far and away the best thing that you can possibly ever do.
Okay.
I really think that there should be a stipulation. I think that Red Sea should sell these aquariums, amazing, these all-in-one aquariums, and then have a little quarantine built right onto the side. Okay. I really feel that, I feel with all the information that we have now in the hobby, that if you're going to keep a fish-only tank, then you probably can get away with having, coming to you guys getting really healthy specimens that are coming in, then you probably, because you'll be able to treat that tank, rather than, the problem always comes down is a lot of the medications we use to kill some of these diseases will kill our normal fauna that's there, will kill the corals. So I strongly believe that if you're trying to keep directly at a reef tank, that you really need to keep a quarantine tank. I think, if anything, if you're not even going to treat anything, it's for observations. To bring these animals home, the healthy animals that you're able to see, they're eating in the pet shop, the fish shop, excuse me. You bring them home, you acclimate them into your quarantine tank. I can't stress enough. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. For how much we spend on these, I mean, truly, a fish, like you can get, again, I always say gallons, so I've been here 10 years, I still could.
I think everyone in the hobby does.
So like even 20, 30 gallon is more than you need to keep 1 or 2 fish in, hang on back filter, or even just an air stone, and then just monitoring your ammonia, making sure we're not really worried about nitrite really with fish. We believe the salt water doesn't really oxidize for them to even hit them, and the nitrates can get quite high for fish. So as long as you're monitoring your ammonia is not spiking, using stability, something like that, or prime, I think prime
is your ammonia conditioner.
So be able to use that to bring it down, but something really simple. It doesn't have to be expensive, but to allow yourself to monitor the fish, to target feed them, to get them home, rather than, again, a beautiful tank like this, and I'm going to go take all prized fish that I'm getting and drop it in, and then it's going to have to compete with all these guys that are all homies and all friends, and they know they have their
From
hierarchy.
From a stress point of view, even
So I cannot stress enough how just being able to get them into a quarantine tank will save, I can imagine, hundreds of dollars, hundreds of euros of headache, but at the end of the day, again, it comes down to caring for the fish, being able to see them, and how many times I've seen it myself, that we bring a fish home that looks so healthy, that has gone through the wholesalers, come to you guys. I know you guys would never sell an animal that in purpose was sick or anything. You'd always, and even with We've Trotted, you guys have removed fish or put them to quarantines and stuff. But is that they can still develop disease or illness during transport, on the way home, or anything like that, or even just the stress of how many times that they've changed tanks. So monitoring them, I have a 52-liter little tank that I use as a quarantine that I clean out and change out all the time, but my fish are in there for a minimum of 30 days. So
you do a full 30-day quarantine. I say full 30-day. There's obviously the difference between, I heard someone on a video a little while ago talking about quarantine in terms of, he doesn't like to use the word quarantine as such, because a full zoological 3-month quarantine where everything's treated and observed right to the end stage is not realistic for most people, most shops or anything. And I know there are people who do it, like I know there's a company in America who sell quarantine fish.
It's amazing.
And your €300 butterfly is now $3,000 in America because it's been through a 3-month quarantine process. You can nearly guarantee that it's totally free. So people are not doing that. So how do you yourself then? So you bring your fish home, you put it into your quarantine tank. What's your process? Are you prophylactically treating? Are you treating in an absence of illness?
So I do. And even with my knowledge, and it really comes down to family time and everything, that when I get home, I kind of really had to think that, am I going to gill clip and skin scrape? And I still do that for quite a few of the fish that come through. But I've been very lucky, and all the fish that I've gotten so far have been incredibly healthy from you guys. And so I generally feel, do I want to put them to the stress of gill clipping and stuff? There is the other aspect of saying, well, we should. That's part of a fish physical exam. So I see both sides of that. But I have done that in the past and still seen disease get through, and even again, if I do a gill clip or a skin scrape and I do it in the wrong spot and I don't get that one little trophont or that one little spot where an ick spot, the Cryptocaris irritans, if I didn't get that and I don't diagnose it, and I go, oh, I'm not going to treat it. Right, so I do think there's a happy medium between the two, and that's why I try to use as a safe enough quarantining protocol. But I do believe the best way to do it, the problem is it's super expensive, it's super time consuming, is I mean, in the ideal world would have a veterinarian, because again, in truly legally and ethically, a veterinarian is the only one supposed to be able to perform. I mean, a gill clip is you're actually cutting away part of the lung of a fish. That is kind of a veterinary procedure. So
we wouldn't be doing that.
So, but to do that, is sit down every single fish that would be coming into the store, right? And that's super. I mean, can you imagine? Again, you're talking about your small fish that are going. We're already talking 50 to 100 euro. And that's going to become much more expensive. But that does allow you to have a much more targeted approach. So again, in the private aquaria, and you do see some some people who have large tanks that have multiple quarantine setups, and some of the famous ones online, do employ the veterinarians to come out there.
Absolutely.
But it's because they have the time, they have the space, and they can focus the energy to say, do you know what, we have done, the ideal would actually be is to have, I think it's nearly 3 to 4 gill clips and skin scrapes that come back negative.
Okay.
And then you can say, I don't think there's anything there.
Yeah.
So
that's unrealistic for the average hobbyist.
Exactly. So that's where I step in, and I actually do use and prophylactically treat. So I have a bit of a quite a long one, but I do initially the fish, no matter what, goes through a slow acclimation process, probably over about 1 to 2 hours.
Okay.
Checking between salinity and also pH, just to make sure it's matching.
Yep.
But usually the problem is I don't really rely on the pH because I am aerating the bucket that they're in.
Okay.
And then I end up disconnecting that. Go, okay, I've matched as much as I can, and then I put the fish through a methylene blue dip, and then they go to a formalin dip. Sorry, formalin and then a methylene blue dip.
Okay. So what's methylene blue do?
So methylene blue is kind of it's like a catch-all, right? So it's kind of like a Band-Aid, but what it does is it does quite well in just being able to provide kind of an antibacterial coating to the outside of the fish. If they've got abrasions, it's a really good and really safe treatment for fish. If you think that they're even...
So it's stimulating a slime coat.
And actually, and it does have a bit of antimicrobial properties in the water, so it will help, and it's quite safe for them. So that is something that works really well. I generally put them through the formalin first, which is a carcinogen, so you have to be very careful with that. But I dip them in that, and then for 30-40 minutes, then I put them in the methylene blue for 30-40 minutes. So as you can see, we're going 2 hours, then an hour, so the pH is changing, but as long as with temperature and as long as everything else is quite good, I'm happy with that. Then they go into the observation for about a week or two. Okay. If they're eating really well, everything like that, then I will slowly increase copper.
Okay. So for a week or two, you'll just condition, feed, observe.
Yes, basically. And I usually will run a very low. It depends on the species that's in. You do obviously have to be very careful. Certain species are highly sensitive to copper, where I might not even use any copper at all, or I don't use some other things. But I start with usually a low level of copper for most species, and then I'll keep that at maybe 1 to 1.5.
Does a low level of copper hide issues?
No,
could you have a fish that's infected with velvet, ick, brook, and you don't see it because it's in a level of copper?
Yes, I'd probably say yes, because you're probably keeping, so as the actual copper itself is only attacking the adult stages, not the larval stages. So yes, you're right. So you might not see them as they're rupturing,
but it's providing a treatment at the same time.
Exactly. But I mean, the one thing would be is that I would never in a quarantine tank at home, I would never start at a low level with not planning to raise it. So
there you go.
So that would be the main thing. While I'm running at a low, the plan is always to increase it to the 2 to 2.5. So you're not going to sit
there at a therapeutic level for a certain amount of time, see nothing, and go cool straight into my display. Yeah. You're going to increase it to treatment level before you introduce that fish into your display.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I'm minimum of 2 weeks and copper. But that's not the only way. There is chloroquine phosphate, which is very difficult to get. It is possible to get, but the concentrations of it's veterinary prescribed only. So that's the other problem, is to be able to use that. But the other option is actually what's really feasible is just doing hyposalinity. Has its I'm not crazy about it. Again, that's much more masking. That's going to absolutely be masking that. I do run my quarantines at a bit lower salinity, so I'm probably running about 30. And I also feel it's just kind of less stress on the animal.
So running hyposalinity is going to mask potential problems.
Exactly, as well. But again, I think if you're doing hyposalinity, then I would be actually looking at a tank swap method of every couple of days switching, because again,
tank swap is something I was going to touch on. When you talk about things like some of the treatments that you use, realistically, there are some things that are available in the veterinary trade that we can't sell. You guys can't buy. But tank transfer is something that everyone can do.
100%. It's just having I don't have the space. I probably would. I just don't have the space. I'm not allowed to have the space. I've got plenty of
You've got a brand new baby in the family. You're not going to your house for the fish tanks anytime soon. You probably got one in there.
I could fit them. I could fit more, but I would not be allowed.
No, sure.
You wouldn't see me anymore here. So, I think that is an absolutely excellent method. But one of the things I think it's really interesting to note is that Streptococcus irritans has been shown to be aerosoled. And that tanks that are kept too close together has been shown that it can jump. A tank that has been shown not to have. So that is where is that if you do have, if you are going to do the tank transfer method, that is actually like taking the fish out of that tank, into one bucket, completely getting rid of all the things you're using, switch them into another bucket, using new things in a different room. I believe they say around 10 feet away is the minimum. And so that can be difficult, but if you're able to do that, it's a very, very safe way. And then being able to actually drain the entire aquarium, leaving that, let that sit completely bone dry, that will kill ick. But if there's any water, it will survive. It can survive through.
Just to really boil that down, because that's a really good point. Ick will aerosolize and travel up to 10 feet, 3 meters across air and infect your tank with it.
Exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. And see, that's, you know, when you have a quarantine tank that's sitting in your sump cabinet, for example, right next to you, you're not quarantining.
No.
You might as well just put them straight in. Well, aside from the fact that you maybe also run some copper in there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'd be a bit worried about the coppers getting into the tank as well.
The copper then getting into the tank. And, because that's the problem, isn't it? Some of the treatment for stuff that we don't want on our fish and in our tanks is also incredibly dangerous, toxic and deadly for a lot of the things that we do want.
And I think it's really interesting that as we're talking about these kind of medications, is that they are medications, and especially coming from the States where, like, most of these, I mean, tons of antibiotics, I mean, true antibiotics, saying that a doctor could prescribe us for pneumonia, we could go into a pet store and just take packets off the wall, and that's why a lot of them have actually been in the United States, and especially in Europe, have been made illegal or taken off. Again, the States, almost nothing's illegal. You can get so many things still, but have been removed because so many people were just being able to say, "Oh, I've got a skin infection. I'm just going to go to the pet store and buy a couple of azithromycin." Oh, there we go. I know what that actually is, even though they're hiding the name.
Wow. Okay.
So that's why, to be honest, and I've again, coming from the States and working in aquaculture and having access to a lot of medications, we really don't have many of the medications that we would use in the States. So that is something that's also really limiting, even in a lot of diseases and stuff that I would see in my own tanks. And in the few, I don't see as much, and I'll probably get onto that a bit later, but in people bringing me pet fish, is that I often am very limited in the treatments of what I can dispense and what I can recommend people to use in their tanks.
And I suppose to that as well, if you've got someone who's bringing a fish to you that's sick and showing serious signs of a disease, is it generally at that point too late for that fish?
No, not always. And the one thing I think that's really interesting is that we talked earlier is that, like, there's no difference in importance and how animals can mean to us. For my dog, that you know, where I'm lucky to work at a veterinary specialist Ireland, a referral hospital, and I see first opinion cases as well for exotics, but where, you know, people were spending sometimes tens of thousands of euro on their dogs and cats, and that really, when we think about it, I truly believe that if we looked at how much we spend on our aquariums versus how much we spend for our dog or cat, like, I know for a fact that I love Bodhi, but I spend a hell of a lot more.
Fish tank's more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And then I find it's really interesting is that the same time that our dog gets sick, and we go, oh my God, and we take him to the vet, and we go, everything. I know there's so many other societal things of us of it's kind of weird to take a fish, put him in a bucket, take it to the vet. But at the same time, it's an animal. We're bringing it to, and hopefully it's very difficult to find someone who can treat them. But I mean, we talk about how expensive these animals are, how much we spend to keep them alive. But then when it comes down to their illnesses, we kind of go, let me go on Google and let me see what's going on, or what can I do to treat? When there are people out there that, again, I totally understand it's hard to find them. Where do we go for it, to find that? But there are people out there where we can do skin scrapes, we can do gill clips, I do x-rays, I've done CTs on fish. There's so many things that we can do.
The first time I met you, you were telling me about how you were just after performing a lung resection on an axolotl.
Yeah, that was
a lung resection on an axolotl. This is what this guy does for a living. It's amazing stuff. It's really cool.
And there's so many things we can do.
Somebody who is taking that pet into a vet to have that treatment and that procedure done to save its life is a wonderful thing to see. It's really nice.
And I truly wish, I'm very busy with all my other exotic passions, but I really wish that we had more fish coming in, because not because they're ill, but because I wish people were seeking actual veterinary care for them, because we really have, like, it's so difficult, and I've seen so many forums and you see so many people that will post pictures up of their fish, their clownfishes. Is this brook? Is this Uranemia? Is this ick? And people are guessing and going back and forth. Or I had a fish that had that, and I use this, and it's all of that is anecdotal. And I understand that we're limited, and I understand. Like, I totally am not trying to say that it's this easy, just do this, but just like these are living creatures that can get any type of bacterial infection. So while we could have a bruised fish that has an ulcer, and we could say that looks like urinemia.
Yeah.
But we could then scrape that and go, no, there's no urinemia, but there is some really weird fungal infection or bacterial infection. And just like your dog or cat can be brought in, and they say, hey, I don't know exactly what this is. We need to do a biopsy. We need to do X-rays. We need to do blood. Now, and many of these fish are too small, but we can take blood. We can actually do blood work and see our fish in kidney failure. Or, again, we're more talking about koi, again, because these guys are so small, we can only take so small amounts. But there still is lots of treatment options available to us. It's just seeking that out and being able to do those, But, you see people, we were talking earlier, whoever buys some of the angelfish that are out there, the dwarfs, I mean, if you're getting a tank bred, €1,500 fish, you kind of think that if it gets sick, you'd like to bring it in and try to get, And then, again, I totally understand there's not that many out there.
Yeah, I was going to say access is a lot. You take that to, I would say pretty much every vet, certainly in Ireland, they're going to look at that and go,
yes, I totally understand that. And I look at the feasibility of getting them in and catching them. And then you do have the other problem is that my dog can just jump in the car with me and I can rush them down. But you're talking about getting water, keeping the water warm, keeping it oxygenated. You do have those issues there. But again, if we're investing, really think how much that would really be. We've invested thousands in these tanks.
Yes.
It's not that much to get a bucket, to get, even heated gloves, like just little plastic gloves, put boiling water in that, and then be able to pop that in to keep that warm, and then battery powered, air. Exactly. There are ways. I get phone calls from people asking for advice and going, my goldfish has a Popeye or it's swim bladder issue, and I go, great, you have to bring them in.
Yes.
And they go, how do I do that?
How do I do that? Yeah.
Well, you have to, there's ways to do it. So.
And it's funny because sort of moving on to disease identification there. It's really interesting. Bobby and I were just messaging over WhatsApp earlier. What are we going to talk about today? What time we're going to see there? We've got the coffee on, all of the important things and that kind of stuff. And you were saying one of the things that we need to be a bit careful of from your point of view as a vet. Obviously, you're legally licensed and registered, and there are rules that you have to follow in that case. That until you've actually examined an animal, it's unethical and illegal for you to say that is what's wrong with it. This is the treatment. So you can't go, I can't say to Bobby, here's a picture of a fish, what's wrong with it? Because you have to say, and then you end up in a situation where, social media is wonderful, don't get me wrong, I love it and I use it a lot, but you see a picture of a fish on there where, and you've got 500 comments below that are giving 510 different reasons for the fish's problem and what people should do about it. It's a really confusing world out there. It's really hard for people to know, when should you take a fish out of a tank and hospitalize it, and when should you have a hospital tank? If you're going to keep a marine reef tank, should you have 10 bottles of different treatments on hand, and how do you ID it? So giving someone like yourself a call and actually taking some proactive steps is a good idea.
I always do. I mean, I do get people contacting me about different fish, and I always will do the best I can. But unfortunately, it's actually mainly in Ireland that we are unable to, without seeing the animals, where I'm legally I can't. I can talk about a disease. I can talk like as I'm doing today. We're talking about these diseases. But if someone would say my fish has this, I think it's this, and the reason behind it is that we don't want to misdiagnose. At the end of the day, I need to be able to say that I've taken an oath to heal animals and to prevent suffering. And really the way around that is to make sure I can physically examine them, advise the tests, and then from that information, gathering information to provide and come up with the best treatment plan possible.
And it's important, I think, because we probably come across our fair share, if not more, because you might have, the hobbyists might have 5 or 10 tanks at home. I can see 5 or 10 tanks behind the camera, and we've got another 50 around the shop. We're literally our fish tanks everywhere here. We've so many stuff, so we've lots of fish going on, so we see a lot of situations. I went through a lesson recently about the difference between looking at a white spot on a fish and thinking it's ick versus something like Epistolis, for example, which is single cell protozoan parasite, attaches to the body of the fish. But interestingly, in that situation, treatment for ick makes Epistolis or the symptoms of it or the problems of it worse. So you're treating for what you think you're doing, but actually you're making the situation worse for the fish because we just don't know what it is. We don't know whether it's ick or Epistolis or any of the others. Here's a question for you. When you look at a fish with Brook, say, can it also have ick?
100%. And most of the time, and that's the other really big problem as well, is that when we see, like, almost all of these species that we keep in aquaria are prey species, right? We think because again, that's just how it works. Predators, there's fewer predators because they have to eat these guys. So most of the animals that we're keeping are prey species. So that means that they are going to hide their illness until their body cannot compensate anymore. So that means that they could be suffering from a gastrointestinal. These guys can get cancer. Like if they're living long enough, we can diagnose, and I've seen tumors in goldfish. They're living 20-something years. So, but are they showing signs because of the cancer? No, they're showing signs because they got a bacterial infection.
Okay.
So that when their immune system is affected, they can start to show multiple different diseases. So that's why often, you see, oh, that's Brooke, and you start treating for it, and you go, hey, the Brooke cleared up, but the animal is still really sick, or they're not really responding, or they're not eating. And again, there's so many physiological limitations for how we're treating these. I was kind of sharing with you guys earlier that when I see lizards all the time, or different types of reptiles, I should say, and we can force feed them. We can place feeding tubes into them to force feed them. Now, that's really hard for these guys. So again, while we're trying to treat them and treat the infection, they can still pass away because they're so immunocompromised. They're losing. You see the sad cases of the mandarin dragonets, or the dragonets that are so emaciated. But you can see these guys as they're getting
diet
sick.
and environment.
Exactly.
Because I've often thought that. I've often looked at a fish and thought, okay, talking about ick specifically because it's a big thing. I've a couple of questions for you about ick in a minute. But if a fish is stressed out because it's got velvet or whatever, if there is ick in that environment, and I don't know answer now, question for a minute, but does ick live in most or every tank? If that fish is then stressed, ill, it's dealing with velvet, is that a fish that the ick parasite is going to go, cool, target, bang, and then they're going to show signs of that? And then you mistakenly go, it's ick, I'll treat for it.
I think it's hard to say. Does it live? It doesn't live in my tank.
No,
no, I don't. I can't.
Okay.
It could be. It could. It really could. And it's hard to say because, again, all of these things that we're doing, it's impossible to say with certainty. I'm quarantining my fish. I'm keeping them at that, but I'm relying on Hanatechers. I'm relying on what the medication that I'm using. I'm relying on that. I can do skin scrapes and stuff, but if I don't catch it there, it doesn't mean it's not there.
It's not
and then I'm putting it into the tank, and God forbid we have a power outage for 6 hours, and then I turn it back on, and the next day there could be an ick outbreak. So
because there's this thing in the hobby where essentially ick specifically doesn't kill fish, or a healthy fish won't die of ick, and it exists in every tank. I guess what I've written here is eradication versus control. How much are you working to control some of these things in your tank and accepting that, okay, there's going to be ick, but I'm going to run a UV sterilizer, I'm going to do this, that and the other to try to reduce populations and stuff like that. If I see signs, I'm going to increase temperature, feed garlic, etc. How much do you think we have to just live with some of these things, and how much do you think that we should strive to entirely eradicate them from our systems?
I think they're both. Absolutely. I think it's a two-sided coin because we need to do both because there's many bacterial and parasitic diseases that we will never be able to guarantee that are not going into the aquarium without a doubt. And even as I walked you through my quarantine protocol, I didn't use any antibiotics. So we shouldn't. We should only be using target antibiotics, but I'm not using any of them. If we're using antibiotics, it's because I see a possible bacterial infection, or I'm culturing or looking at that and staining that and under a microscope. And yet, how many people are reaching for antibiotics to treat these things again? We can't keep everything out. But there are many things that we can keep out, and my belief is that there is ways that we can eradicate different types of urinemia, which I hope I never have to see, because that's just it's usually once it's in a tank, it's so bad. But like Brooke or things like that we should be able to, if we quarantine properly, if we get them from reputable sources, and we're really trying to source healthy fish, we should be able to keep most of that out of our tank, But it really comes down to I know for a fact I'm talking about how I'm quarantining my all the fish going in, but I also don't have a quarantine for my corals. And that absolutely is a way to bring different, and even the inverts. I'm so obsessed because inverts are definitely one, because a lot of times we keep inverts in similar situations where there is fish in the tanks as well, and they've been shown, studies showing that the ick has been carried in on the shells of hermit crabs and things like that. But if we give copper, we're gonna there they go.
There's a hermit crab. Guys. Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
So that's where, I mean, really, like, we can get really obsessive. You know, as you said, this is where prevention. I'm going to treat the fish, and most likely, I'd say 99% of the chances of bringing ick into our tank is going to come on the fish.
Yep.
But we can still bring it on the coral. We can still, so in an ideal world, you would have a coral quarantine. You have an invert quarantine, and then you have a fish quarantine. And I mean, the ideal way is to keep them, I think, nearly, is it 6 to 10 weeks? If you're getting any inverts,
periods.
Yep, is really to ensure that they don't have any host, that they're able to die off from that. But I don't do that.
That's actually, now as you come to think about it, and I'm just thinking things through, but 2 things that spring into my mind. Number one, when you're taking a hermit crab out of a system that's full of fish, if that ick parasite can aerosolize and travel in a evaporated droplet of water through the air, you're telling me that a soaking wet hermit crab isn't potentially absolutely passive in it.
Exactly.
But then it's actually quite easy, really, isn't it? Because fallow period says that if that parasite doesn't have a host for X amount of time, it goes through its life cycle, it dies. So if you took every hermit crab, every coral, every shrimp, everything that you bought, put it into your quarantine system for a period of 90 days, and then put it into your system, actually you're ick free. Yeah,
exactly. The one thing I'd say is your anemia can live off a host, so that's the one thing that, again, I keep saying, because I'm just so, I've luckily never had it in my own tanks, but I've had multiple friends that have, and it wipes everything out. So, but your anemia is one of the ones, the nasty ones, that can live on the substrate, can live off a host for a long period of time. But again, the aerosolization and stuff, it's much more on fish, and that's how it kind of comes in. But so I think that you have the prevention. I think there is that way of really trying eradication, but then I think when we're in the tank and control, I think is really important. And even I've talked to you guys a lot about UV sterilizers and stuff. Back in the day, when I was keeping them, and it's something I've had to re-educate myself on, even coming back into the hobby, is that back in the day, everyone used to say your UV sterilizers do nothing, and they were really, we didn't know much about them, and there's so many different, the canisters that they're in has improved, and the refraction of the light and everything.
We know about flow rates.
Exactly. Like that's drastically improved, and we I mean, some of them now are even coming. Before it used to be just hook it up, put it into your pump, and it mainly was just killing algae. And now it still does that, but it really depends on the flow rate. So the faster the flow rate that's going through, I think, what was it? Is it 80,000 micro, centimeters per whatever, passing through? The faster the rate you have, the more algae. You're going to be getting much more water passing through your UV sterilizer. That's targeting your algae population.
Water clarity, etc.
Exactly, and that's fine. That's something really good to have. But then, if again we're talking about fish health, so we're talking about that. We're focused on trying to control, and I think it's really important is that they're called UV sterilizers. So they are. They're not.
That's the next thing. They don't kill it at all, do they?
And I think people kind of think of it as these, like, the bug zappers that you have on the wall. Exactly. And going, perfect, we got it. And it doesn't work that way. What it does is as the parasites are actually floating through, their DNA is altered to making them unable to then reproduce. So while we can still have ick in the tank, you're actually, if all of the water is passing through the UV at a slower rate, at the rate appropriate for that, we can actually be sterilizing that, keeping it under control. But we're not getting rid of it. It can still be thriving and living off of the fish, but as they're rupturing, the adult stage is then going through the water column, it's then meeting the UV.
So we're breaking the life cycle. It's a way of breaking the life cycle rather than killing.
And allowing the fish's innate immune system, while we're supporting it with good nutrition and good water quality and all those other things, is that we're
environment, places to hide, treatment when necessary,
and allowing them to build that slime coat back up to protect themselves from reinfection. So
I think UV sterilizers are fantastic. I mean, we've 220 watts worth of UV on our fish baits. Honestly, the thing is enormous. But I think it is definitely a key point there, which is that device has multiple uses. Everyone knows that they make your water look clearer. They reduce turbidity in the water. Cool, by killing algae, great. But that's at a certain flow rate, and you have to use the tool for the right job in the right way, otherwise it doesn't work.
Exactly. And I think as well, like, there's always, I think with so many things that we do in this hobby, as we said, we want them to be as clean as possible for ourselves, but then we're moving food from our fish. At the same time, with UV sterilizers, we're moving algae food from our fish. But also, I run a refugium on my tank. Well, my refugium is then going to pass through my UV sterilizer, which I'm hoping copepods are living in that. So I'm, again, so there's always trade-offs in this hobby. No matter what we're doing, there's always that tipping balance. I think you talked to me about that as well, of some of the parameters and stuff, but there's always this, as we want to go strive for one aspect, that we will affect our tank, will affect our fish health, will affect the ecology, literal ecology of our tank. We're always going to be doing, by us going in and trying to fix something, trying to prevent one thing, we might cause something else.
Okay. Dr. Bobby, thank you so much indeed. That's such good info. I'd love to have you back sometime, get more in depth into things like we've brushed through quarantine and stuff like that. We should do some more stuff. It's really interesting to talk to you if you're up for it. And,
I think we both know as many talks we've had in here that we can keep going.
Absolutely. You could talk about this stuff for hours and hours and hours, couldn't you? It's absolutely fascinating. What's your Instagram? You're on Insta, aren't you? You do a bunch of stuff on that.
I try to, so Dr_Bob.
Okay.
Just on Instagram right now. I don't know.
Dr_Bob. Have a look at Bobby and see all the cool stuff he's up to.
Very good.
I'll put a link to your Instagram handle in the comments and all of that kind of stuff. Bobby, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.